Folks, it is a beautiful spring morning. The birds are chirping, the bees are buzzing, the cows are cowing. We've reached our last frost date here in Zone 9A. The garden beds are prepped. We've been hardening off these seedlings, and it's time to get these into the garden. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about hardening off your seedlings, getting them ready to plant into the garden. We're also going to plant each variety of these. We're going to talk about exactly how much fertilizer they need per plant. Stay tuned, grab your coffee, and let's get started. Now that you've reached your last frost date and the temperatures are right for planting, you want to take your seedlings and slowly start to harden those off. What we're doing is we're getting the indoor plants that you had, or even the plants that you had in the greenhouse. You're taking those plants and you're slowly getting them used to not only the sunlight, but also the wind. So over the matter of a course of 7 to 10 days, you want to put those plants out. If they've been indoors only, you want to put them out in a shady spot for an hour for the first 1 to 3 days, and then slowly start working those into the sunlight. So after you've exposed those plants to 3 days of shade, you want to work those into the sunlight, then for an hour for the next 3 days, and then slowly increase the time they're outside. Maybe another 30 minutes each following day until you get about 7 to 10 days. Then those plants are hardened off sufficiently and they're ready for the sunlight and the wind that they're going to withstand in your garden. All right, folks. Now that we have our seedlings hardened off, we're going to talk about each one of these and the fertilizer requirements in order to get those off to a great start for your summer garden. So let's head on over. We'll take a look at the fertilizer, and we're going to break these down for how much watermelons need versus eggplant versus cucumber versus tomato. So what we're going to be referencing is the LSU Agriculture Center. It's a free resource. I have some shots here so you can see it. It breaks down not only plant varieties, planting dates for LSU. I recommend you look out for your state agriculture center. If they don't have one, I'll have links down in the description for this video below for you to take a look at that. It lists crop rotations you can do in your garden this size. It also mentions plant varieties for different tomatoes in Louisiana. It's focused on Louisiana, but it works for all over the United States and all over the place. So we'll be referencing that for the fertilizer, and now we'll go and take a look at that and how we're going to break down fertilizer. They talk about 100-foot rows and how much fertilizer to apply for a 100-foot row. We're going to break that down for 1 foot. Because in my raised bed garden, I plant according to a square foot gardening method. So we're going to convert that from a 100-foot row into a square foot gardening method, which is what I roughly follow here in my raised bed. So let's take a look at the fertilizer. Right. So when we plant our plants, we're going to be using some 888 all-purpose fertilizer. Now the LSU Ag Center does a good job. They talk about general purpose or all-purpose fertilizers. So 888, 10-10-10, 13-13, 20-20-20. These are all the same description or breakdown. It basically tells you for a 100-pound bag of fertilizer, it's going to contain 8% nitrogen, 8% phosphorus, and 8% potassium. You know, your top 3 fertilizers. So for a 100-pound bag, it's going to have 8 pounds, because 8% of 100 is 8. 8 pounds nitrogen, 8%, 8 pounds of potash, so forth. So 13 is going to be the same thing. It's going to be 13% or 13 pounds. So this is a slow release synthetic fertilizer. So it is great. It will fertilize for 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks. We're going to combine that with a all-purpose water-soluble plant food that will feed right now. Because when we put our plants in the garden, we've been fertilizing with this for the past few weeks since those plants reached the 2-week mark and they got their first set of true leaves. We've been supplementing once a week with this all-purpose fertilizer to get them a great start. Now we're going to continue probably for the next 2 weeks after we put them in the ground. We're going to continue to water them in well every couple days. And we're also going to plant according to the LSU Ag Center for the all-purpose fertilizer that will fertilize them for the next couple weeks. And then we'll look at any side dressing they mentioned as well. Now I'll take you inside real quick and show you how I converted the measurements for a 100-foot row into a 1-foot area. So let's take a look at that real quick. All right, folks. So we want to figure out how much fertilizer we need per foot. So what our paper tells us is how much fertilizer we need for a 100-foot row. So I'm trying to convert that from 100 foot down to 1 foot. So it's given us a use case of 6 pounds. I think it was for potatoes or tomatoes. 6 pounds per 100-foot row. So I need to convert pounds. Let's do 6 pounds into ounces. I know there's 16 ounces in a pound. So we're going to convert pounds to ounces and then see where we're at for a 100-foot row. So if we do 6 times 16, that equals 96. So that's basically 1 ounce per foot. So for a 100-foot row, that equals 96 ounces. So for everything that needs 6 pounds of fertilizer for a 100-foot row, we can put 1 ounce per foot. Everything on our scale that is 3 pounds. So I'm not going to bore you with the rest of those calculations. Here you can see we have the granulated fertilizer. So what I'm doing is I'm measuring out 1 ounce to figure out how many, I believe it was come out into teaspoons. So we'll figure out for 1 ounce how many teaspoons that is, and then we can convert that into how much we need for 6 pounds and how much we need for 3 to 4 pounds. All right. So we figured out that everything marked for 6 pounds for a 100-foot row is going to be 1 ounce per foot. So that is going to be 5 teaspoons. Everything marked in our chart that says 3 pounds per 100 square foot row needs 1/2 ounce, and that's going to be 3 teaspoons. So we have everything to get started. Let's head out to the garden. Okay, folks, so the first part of our fertilization, as we're planting our plants, we're going to water each one, and then we're going to cover it with mulch to keep it from evaporating. If you've watched the seed starting series, you know as soon as the plants get their true leaves, we started feeding with this all-purpose Miracle-Gro fertilizer. So we're going to mix this in with the outdoor instructions, which is 1 big spoon per gallon. So this is a 2 gallon, so we're going to put 2 scoops in here. When the seedlings were still in the seedling trays in the greenhouse, we used the small one, which is the indoor measurement for indoor plants. So now that they will be truly outdoor plants, 1 scoop. And make sure these scoops are close to level. So 2 scoops, in it goes. And we'll probably do this once a week for the next 2 weeks. Give that granular all-purpose fertilizer a chance to start breaking down and feeding our plants. So mix in your water. Okay, so we're going to get started with our tomato plants. So we have 2 varieties of tomato. We have our indeterminate tomato plant, and we also have our cherry tomato. So you can see the difference in those. Cherry tomato is going to go crazy, so I'm going to have that probably a cage here right behind me in this area. On the outside of each of my garden beds this season, I'm going to plant tomato plants. On the inside, I'm going to do a trellis with cucumber, cantaloupe, watermelon, and then cucumber. So we're going to dig a nice deep hole for a tomato. Now tomato will make roots all the way up the plant. So you can plant that as deep as you want and it will make roots. We're going to remove these lower branches. So we're going to dig a nice deep hole here. We can even kind of lay it on the side. And I mentioned I use the square foot gardening method. Tomatoes, I believe it calls for 1 foot. You can see we have some nice roots on this plant, so it is just right for planting. Now tomatoes, I give a little more room. So this is a 2 foot wide bed, but I do allow it for 2 squares instead of 1 square. I'm going to grow these as a single stem, and we'll trellis up as the season goes. So the LSU Ag Center, our fertilization recommendation, it calls for 6 to 8 pounds of 888 fertilizer for every 100-foot row. So we don't have a 100-foot row right here, which is what I was talking about. We have basically 1 foot. So converting 6 pounds of 888 basically converts to 5 teaspoons of fertilizer. So that's what I have here is 5 teaspoons. So we're going to sprinkle that around. And we'll feed this plant for roughly 6 to 8 weeks. And it'll talk about side dressing in another, I believe, 4 to 6 weeks. We'll put down another application of fertilizer and we'll come back and do that at that time. So also we're going to water this plant in very good, trying not to get the leaves too wet. So you see we have nice, well-draining soil. The water soaks in. Then the very next thing we do, absolutely essential, you want to cover those plants, the base, with mulch. That's going to keep that water from evaporating and help to keep those roots moist and give your plant a great head start. So that's tomatoes. Now we'll move on to cucumbers. All right, we have a 4-for-1 special right now. So this area of my bed, on each side as you enter my garden, I'm going to have a cow panel that trellises up as a big canopy. It will be 4 foot wide, so for each foot I'm going to put 4 plants. So it's a 4-foot panel. I'll have four plants each in a 1 foot section. So I'm going to have cucumber, then watermelon, then another cucumber, and then cantaloupe. So each of these are all fertilized the same. They, according to the LSU Ag Center, they require 3 to 4 pounds of fertilizer for a 100-foot row. So from our conversion earlier, I know that's 3 tablespoons. So 3 teaspoons of fertilizer, but you can see how much I have here. That'll go on each plant. So we'll go ahead and dig those in and get those planted right now. First up, cucumber. And the tomatoes, we want to plant those as deep as we can because it'll grow roots. The rest of these, you want to make sure you plant at the plant to the top of the soil. I'm going to firm that in. Next is our watermelon. This is a Chubbiness new variety from our garden. It's a seedless variety. And I have links to all these in the description below. And I don't know if y'all have seen the Hoss Tool channel yet, but you want to check that out. I've come across it recently and I have been binge watching those guys. It's a father and son team and they do an excellent job. They have a show they do, I think Thursday nights, where they do garden talk, and then they'll have episodes where they're actually in the garden planting. So here we're going to do another cucumber, and this is a straight 8 cucumber variety. You can see those roots. These guys are past ready to get in the ground. So all of these plants we started in early January, so it is early March now. We have our last frost date we've checked. We hit our last frost date, and we also checked our 10-15 day extended forecast, and that looks great. Temperatures are in the 70s during the day, 60s. Lowest I've seen, I think, was the upper 40s for one night. Look at these cantaloupe plants. They already have flowers on them. So these are well on their way. To taking off. Again, we can see the root system on there. So as I mentioned earlier, these beds are 2 foot. So I will actually come back with some additional plants or some flowers that I'll put in the other area. So each of those gets a scoop, 3 teaspoons. Safe. Now we'll go ahead and water those in really good. Your mulch. This makes a huge bit of difference in those plants being able to stay moist throughout the heat of the day. It's only getting into the 70s, but that sun can be intense and that water can evaporate quickly. All right, we're gonna get you another twofer right here. We're talking about eggplant and peppers. So this goes for, this is bell pepper, it goes the same for hot peppers, jalapeno peppers, bell peppers, any type of peppers, and also eggplant. So those both take 5 to 6 pounds of fertilizer for 100 square foot. So we know 6 pounds fertilizer for 100 square foot equals 5 tablespoons. So we will put our 5 teaspoons of fertilizer and then water these in, cover them with compost, make sure you mark them. Now eggplant gets pretty good in size, so I'll give that some room when I plant it. Bell pepper, this is going to get some evening shade, so it's not going to get as much sun, so I'm going to give that a whole square, a whole 2 squares rather, instead of just the normal one if I have it out in the middle of my bed. So 5 teaspoons, sprinkle that out for both plants. Each gets their own. We'll go ahead and water it in good. And then cover with mulch. Go ahead and remove these lower leaves. And that's peppers and eggplant. Okay, beans. We're doing our beans in pots this year for no other reason than I am out of space. So we're gonna do, about 3 sets in this 10-gallon pot. And our beans are fertilized at 3 to 5 pounds per 100-foot row. So we're gonna break that down into 3 teaspoons. So since we have so many in here, we'll do a little extra. That'll be 1. We'll do 3 sets of 2. We'll do a little TP action in here. Binding those up some bamboo poles. So we'll go ahead and sprinkle. We'll do 5 teaspoons since we have so many in here. Then we'll water that in just like everything else. And cover with our mulch. Now, anything you do in pots, you particularly want to cover with mulch because they will definitely have a tendency to dry out faster than your plants you have in a garden bed. All right, folks, that's it. The garden's planted. May look like we have a lot of extra plants, but we still have 2 boxes to plant that I haven't built yet. And complete that archway on each side of my entry. So it's also nice to have a couple of spare plants in case some of your transplants don't make it. So I always plan for that as well. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Hope we brought something of good information value to you. If we did, if you enjoyed it, please click like, hit the subscribe button, click the bell notification so you get notified of future videos. And hope to see you soon. Thanks. Man, I'm glad that is over.